Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
Welcome, Doc.
Yeah. So it's just one of the many purposes. The fuel cost is very little.
Doc, good morning.
Good morning.
You're welcome. Well, let's hear from Doc on this one.
Let me apologize for coming late. I got the invitation very late last night, and I indicated that I will be here at 9:30, and so I'm exactly here at about 9:30. But I still need to apologize to listeners. This is a very interesting situation we find ourselves in. Interesting because we have dilly-dallied over this issue for the last 15 years or so, beginning with the toll debt recovery debt under President Kufuor to this day. We have lacked the courage or the necessary political will to tackle energy issues headlong. Let me start with the additional 1 cedi tax, and let me state that it is not a new tax. The energy sector shortfall and debt recovery levy has been on the books for a while. So it's just been increased from 95 pesos to 1 cedi 95 pesos. So again, let's get it clear, it's not a new tax. Why did the government have to do this? Let me concede, and I'm not in government. I'm speaking purely as a consultant and a private person. I hold no executive position whatsoever. Let me concede that the communication could have been better. Preparatory work could have been better. But it is also absolutely necessary. The main fuel for our power plants happens to be gas, natural gas. That is the main fuel for our power plants. But the supplementary fuels have been light crude oil, heavy residual fuel oil, and diesel. The thermal plant owned by VRA, its secondary fuel is diesel, which is far more expensive than the residual fuel oil that AXA, for example, uses. But most of the plants, their main supporting fuel is light crude oil. We still don't have absolute control over natural gas. Plants go down for maintenance, both planned and unplanned. Both the one at the Ghana gas plant and the ENI plant on board their FPSO. Then we still import some amount of gas from Nigeria. So these are our 3 main gas sources. Part of the challenge we face is that even domestic gas is expensive because the ENI gas is not associated gas, it's standalone gas. And therefore, all the cost recovery is on the back of gas. So that makes it far more expensive than the tallow gas. The tallow gas is associated gas. It's gas we find in association with crude oil. So the expense is on crude oil. So the gas becomes more or less a bonus. And therefore the cost is lower. A byproduct. In fact, it's not a byproduct. It comes with it. And we build the cost recovery on the crude. And so the gas price there. Unfortunately, for the last 8 years, there's been no serious exploration or additional production. We know that we still have some gas fields we have not exploited. We know that greater Jubilee, especially the 10 field, can still come up with a lot of gas. Indeed, they are planning to inject about $2 billion into that. If that comes up with more associated gas, our weighted average cost of gas will come lower. So this is the gas situation. But as of today, if you take the electricity tariff, it does not take account of the liquid fuels that come in as backup fuel. So anytime we've had to buy liquid fuel, be it VRA, be it the IPPs, there's really no fiscal space for it in the electricity tariff. Already, the current electricity tariff is not fully cost reflective. It is not fully cost reflective. That is one leg, and I've stated elsewhere that the 1 cedi additional tax will be meaningful if we tackle the other leg of the energy sector debacle. If we don't tackle the other leg, let's take ECG and NETCO, our two primary distributing companies. They lose about 30% of the power they buy. Whether they buy from VRA or buy from IPPs. Before it gets to the consumer, and the consumer pays for it, about 30% is missing in quotes, in either technical losses or commercial losses, but the situation is that both technical and commercial losses. What margin can you put on a product to compensate for a 30% loss? You can't put a 40% margin if you go to the market. And so, if we don't tackle that leg of the problem, we'll be pouring water in a basket. And for me, that is so critical. There has to be major reforms, structural, managerial, especially in the power sector. The oil sector is not exempt, and I will come to that. The inefficiency is there. But the power sector, because the power sector is really the engine of our industrial development. Our government's 24-hour economic policy will rest on the power sector. Our social development will rest on the power sector. And so it is so important we get the power sector right. We have not seriously tackled the structural and managerial deficiencies in the power sector. If we go on this as business as usual, the next another 10 years we'll come and sit here and be still discussing this. I am a social democrat. In fact, in some ways, an unrepentant socialist. But modern socialism recognizes economic fundamentals. We cannot pretend, even including the Ghanaian right, that electricity is today only a social commodity. And it is important we address this. At the time Osajefo of blessed memory constructed the VRA Dam, the agreement with Kaiser, as lopsided as later we found it to be, the inflows were enough to pay for the cost, capital recovery as well as running cost. And therefore, it was right for electricity to be cheap for the people of Ghana. If you locate that in its historical content, it was right. 50 years on, Akosombo is responsible for less than 40% of our electricity supply. So the electricity mix has changed completely. So Akosombo is legacy hydro. Akosombo generates at less than, I'm being very generous, less than 4 cents per kilowatt hour. It's more like 3, but I'm being generous, less than 4. Bui Power sells to ECG above 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And therefore, when it comes to legacy hydro, we cannot classify Bui as legacy hydro. In any case, it's only a peaking plant. Kondam, that has 160 megawatt signature plate, is bigger in gigawatt hours than the 400 megawatt Bui plant. And so we have to look for other alternatives. There is this idea of solar. Currently, solar suffers some huge negatives if we are using solar as base power. Storage, variability, etc. That does not mean we should not go for solar, especially individual non-grid power. If I had my own way, all government schools, all health facilities, the roofs should be populated by solar panels, so that those institutions, you don't have to connect that to the grid. So we have a serious energy challenge. But this challenge is basically economic, financial. My previous boss, Dr. Tiaji, when I was deputy minister, once said we didn't have an energy problem, we had a financial problem. How do we get the finances? How do we pay for the energy we need to develop? And how do we make our payments cost effective? We must not pay because we must pay. There has to be some efficiency. So the first major task is to bring down the cost of production, drive down costs, and drive up efficiency, especially in the power sector. We are so inefficient. Part of it must be blamed on the shareholder, the government of Ghana representing all of us. Some pieces of equipment are depleted. They are way beyond their sell-by date. And when you have poor, old, obsolete equipment, the wastage increases. And those are technical losses. You can address the technical losses by investment. But the commercial losses, 90% of the commercial losses, in my opinion, pure thievery. There's no more polite way of putting it. pure thievery. Thievery by all of us as a collective. Energy sector workers, especially ECG and NEDCO, are part of the stealing cabal. Their contractors, ECG, NEDCO contractors, are also part of it. Then there is the worst part, the lack of compliance enforced by ECG and NEDCO. They know which factories in Accra and Tema are stealing power. They go, they are settled on the side and they move away. And they repeat that. We also lack the political will to take the punitive measures that we have to take. If we catch a factory stealing power, it's not just a matter of a fine quietly. The fine must be such that for the next 2 years, you will still be paying part of it. We need to, and we must name and shame these big power chiefs. And then in our own localities, we know our neighbors who are still in power. You go to places, especially where the lower middle class live, have air conditioners on sometimes 12 hours in the day. There is no way they can be paying for that price if they were actually paying the right price. So we need to look at that. So for me, that is the power side. The electricity side, we can mix it. The petroleum side. There are inefficiencies inbuilt into the price build-up. The latest price build-up was issued on 1st June. If you look at that, let me give you just 2 examples so that I don't take too much time. We have the UPPF, Uniform Petroleum Pricing Formula. The single largest OPEX, operating expense, in running transport is fuel. Fuel prices have come down by a good percentage in the last 6 weeks or so, to the extent that Ghana Private Road Transport Union and other private transport operators have reduced their prices. The UPPF figure has remained the same. Why hasn't that also come down? Remember the scandal around this UPPF. Part of it is that there's just too much juice there. So we will have to calm down, take a second look at the pricing build-up. Then there's the primary distribution margin, which is also another transportation-related margin. That has not also changed. So again, that must also come down. Then there's the elephant in the room. The premium charged by BIDEX, BDCs, OMCs. As we speak, the premiums can go as much as $400 per metric ton. And we believe with the appreciation of the currency, they should go down to below $300 per metric ton. And that will impact the pump price. So government, especially the ministries of Energy and Green Transition and Finance, there's a lot of work to be done. If we are able to do this within the next 3 months, and with the stability of the cedi, notwithstanding the additional 1 cedi, we will be able to bring petroleum pricing down considerably. So these are my initial remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Dr. Kwabena Nonko, like I said, has had many positions when it comes to matters of energy, Petroleum Commission, founding CEO for BOST, had the job of fixing our power issue back in 2014, 2015, and then of course he's played watchdog roles from Parliament among others. Well, the interesting thing about this, what they call it, obsolete equipment, is that the ECG imports the equipment to come and change, they leave it at the port, then we start looking for the container. The whole cycle is something else. Well, let me come to my immediate left.
Before you do that, if Doc can, because he mentioned the solar.
Yes.
Is it not the issue really about the net metering that we are refusing to adopt?
In fact, net metering has been on the books. In fact, in 2015, 2016, we got Energy Commission to put the policy in place. There is no excuse for the inertia. There's no excuse for the inertia. At least for individual houses. On Comrades' house, if he populates his house with solar panels beyond what he needs, the surplus should go into the grid and he's credited for it with it, so that when the solar is not available and he's taking power from the grid, we can net it off. Again, today storage technology is improving. Storage technology is improving and the cost is coming down. And that is why I will prefer, if we were to put all our hospitals, all our health centers, all our chips compounds on solar with storage, whether inverters or whatever storage, within 5 years, whatever money we spent will have been recovered. And for the next 10 years or so, we'll only have operations and maintenance. So yes, the solar angle, at least non-grade solar, we've gone to sleep. Essentially, we've gone to sleep.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, so once again, let me wish your lovely viewers a good morning. Wish yourself a good morning. My white friend, I don't know, he's still refusing to stop wearing white, especially what white shirts or white clothes remind the sad bit of the white, you know. And
I just wanted to clear a few things and also take responsibility for something. I chair the NDC Power Subcommittee that came out with our proposals for our manifesto. I just want to clear this private sector participation that others are calling privatization. They are two different things. Private sector participation, ECG already has that. They use contractors. Private sector is already participating in the ECG and NETCO businesses. We just want to intensify some areas. The ownership of the assets, 100% will belong to the state. Privatization is about equity. Privatization is about equity. There's a distinction between privatization, which involves the transfer of equity, and private sector participation, which will involve subcontracting. I just want to make that clear, particularly because I chair that committee, and so I take responsibility. And let me give you a certain basis. When the PDS, as badly as it was managed, as fraudulently as it was contracted, when PDS took over the concession, not the assets, PDS did not bring more than 3-4 Filipinos into Ghana. In fact, the MD they appointed was a former MD of ECG. The same ECG workers, and yet their collection increased. Their responsiveness to queries from customers improved. By almost every indicator, performance improved for that short period. Meaning, Ghanaians are capable of doing the right thing. But how come the same workers under state direct ownership? So there is a question of supervision, really, for me. The real issue is supervision. How do we improve it? If the unions will be fair, that is the question. We didn't bring, there were only about 2-3 Filipino technicians. They are the same Ghanaians, including a former MD of ECG who became MD of PDS. So introspectively, we must ask ourselves question. Why is it that we don't perform well if we say this is the state? Whether it's the wrong ideology, the wrong mindset, poor supervision, those are the issues we have to. But just let me also come to the Kwalugu Dam briefly. And then our mini hydros. The economics of mini hydro, the pricing is higher. The unit cost of generation is higher. A good example is the Bui Dam. The Bui Dam, because of the size, as I stated earlier, it is in generation times smaller than Kong. Even though the headline signature is 400, but in generation it's smaller than Kong. And so the cost is 2-3 times that of Kong. So the smaller it is, but Kwalugu makes sense because there's also a certain social accounting we have to take into. It opens the area up for agriculture. On the energy alone, the hydro alone, the economics will make up. And so there's a reconfiguration that also introduces solar. That will supplement the hydro with solar to at least bring the cost of generation down. It will, at least it can match Bui if we add solar, if not be slightly lower. But the real benefit is going to be agriculture if we handle it well.
The cost is still lower than thermal generation.
No. You see, we have thermal plants now that are generating between 9 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Yes. There was an excessive one under President Kufuor, Trans-Thermal. But that went as high as 21 cents. So that figure is right. But it was under Kufuor's, when we had the load shedding, they brought in Trans-Thermal. That went to about 21 cents. But the average thermal generation now is between 9 and 13. It's still high. It's still high. And part of it is also political risk of investment. If you go out to borrow for a plant in Ghana, there's always a political risk they add to it. But as our economy stabilizes, as we build our economy, we can even push that down. So that is a challenge, the Pra, Tano, and with our Galamsey, even compromising this further. If we put, originally when I was deputy minister, we were looking at cascading turbines rather than the big ones, run of the river, as we call them. But the quality of the water now, the acidic nature, your turbine blades, I'm not too sure, and then the cost. So that's that, but it is still worth, as technology improves, it's still worth considering. Are there new technologies that we can deploy that will bring down the cost? So we need to do that. One other thing I left out really is that also the government institutions, at least the military, the police, they pay. They pay. They don't pay on consumption. There is what we call cross-sector arrangement where the Ministry of Finance would pay for that against ECG's payment to the government. Government has guaranteed a number of facilities, or other times on lend a number of facilities to ECG, and so they use that to cross pay. Let me get that out for the sake of listeners, because there's this impression they don't pay. Okay. There is that impression. My last little one on this we're going to confer has to do with premixed fuel. Look, we spend, the subsidy is over 200 million cedis a year on premix alone. In fact, premix sells for 5 cedis, 35 pesos a litre. Government's direct subsidy is 4 cedis, 11 pesos on a litre. Meanwhile, I come from a fishing area, Yeji. The fishermen get less than the 10% of the premix they need. So they buy raw 91 and then degrade it with engine oil. So they pay for a litre more than you pay to put in your car. And yet there's a subsidy in their name that goes to enrich a certain class of people. Yeah. And that is why I have publicly stated that government should remove the subsidy. When government removes the subsidy, it will come to about 9 cedis. It's still lower than raw 91, but the gap is such that there will not be a need for economic rent that people are benefiting from. We are intellectually lazy.
And the premise ends up in our vehicles.
Yes, and also spoils your vehicles. We are intellectually lazy because we don't think through what do the fishermen want. Oh, if we send this to fishermen, oh, they will vote for us. But you design policies for a period. When the external environment, operating environment changes, you must change. And yet we get caught up in the past and do not want to change. And that creates all these issues. So from the petroleum sector alone, we have what we call marine gas oil. It's basically gas oil without the taxes.
Okay,
and
no, because of time,
I will just give me 30 seconds to land on this. Between 2023 and 2024, the volume of marine gas oil doubled. Where does it go? It goes to the market, not to fishing boats. And there's no duty on it. So again, we are losing huge sums on it. And so again, some of us are calling for put the levies back. Let the price be equal to gas oil. And then the smuggling. Kenoforiata, for me, the first issue that I want Kenoforiata and the team to account for is ESLA. Under our financial management regulations, if you divert the use of any allocation to something else without the authority of Parliament, it's an offense. So we remember in the 8th Parliament, we raised the issue of the ESLA bonds. The bonds were used for, part of the process were used for administrative and non-energy activities. So, as the minister, he must account for that. It's one of the things I want the investigating agencies to investigate, because it's a breach of law. If we do that, the Ghanaian public will feel far more confident about this one city. That this one too, we will not misapply that. And that even if we do, the people who do that will be held accountable and they may go to jail for that. So we need to enforce laws vigorously. Kenoforiata, I would have been very sympathetic to Kenoforiata if Kenoforiata had resigned at the time we're calling on him to resign due to ill health. Remember, he had a major surgery. In the midst of that serious health challenge, resign, the man says, I won't resign. So, if you will not resign, in the midst of ill health. How then do you use ill health as an excuse not to be held accountable? And for public officers, we must learn that what goes round comes round. I would have been very sympathetic to Ken. Normally, if somebody's legitimately ill, it will sound callous to want the person to present himself for interrogation or for investigation. But when you have a case where this same person, when he had major life-threatening surgery, refused to resign, even amidst the call of MPs from his own party, a number of NPP MPs lost their primaries, lost their elections because of the call on Ken Ofori-Atta to resign. The establishment went against them for them to lose their primaries because they dared ask Ken Ofori-Atta to resign. And so Ken must come. As we say in the vernacular, direct translation, he should come and remove his mouth. He must come and explain. Probably he was acting under instructions. Probably there were correspondences that we are not aware. But at least come and present your side of it. Okay. Until you do that, and under the Public Financial Management Act, the Minister of Finance is so powerful. He's clothed with so much power. And he can take credit for good financial, especially fiscal governance, and must take the blame.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. Thank you.
Dedi kama amena PENDREAM TV ase. Now so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.